Good afternoon. I'd like to bring the Corporate Services Committee meeting to order, January 15th. It's now 12:01 p.m. I first will start out with a land acknowledgement. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. The land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattamadarok, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara-Grimsby stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands in which we live. Okay, are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda? Councillor Vardy, Councillor Howe. Resolved that the January 15th, 2024 Corporate Services Committee agenda be approved. All in favor? Carried. Next item on the agenda is the receipt of the previous minutes. Can I get a mover and seconder to receive the previous minutes? Councillor Howe and Councillor Vardy. Resolve that the minutes from the December 4, 2023 Corporate Services Committee meeting be received. All in favor? Carried. Item 6, there are no delegations. There are no consent reports. And we move to item 8.1, report TC 2401. So report from the Clerk's Department on Legal Services. Can I please get a mover and a seconder to get this item on the floor? Councillor Howe. Councillor Vardy, seconded. And now I will turn it over to Bonnie to give the report. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Staff undertook a review of, as you noticed in your Corporate Services Standing Committee agenda, of 17 like-sized municipalities. Some of those municipalities were either above or below the town's population by about 10,000 people, residents. Next, staff reviewed and captured legal fees over the past 6 years, how we were spending them, and we noted, obviously, as you can see in the report, that the numbers for the years rose significantly from 2018 to 2023, and we still have not got the final numbers for 2023. If you want those numbers, I'm happy to provide them, but at this point, I'm just giving you kind of a high-level overview of the report itself. So staff leaned on the Pelham model, as you can tell by the report, because this seemed closest to the model that potentially may work here in Grimsby, which is a shared service model. And the shared services in Pelham started with one municipality being the prime employer. So I believe it's similar to what you have in your fire services presently. So Pelham is the prime employer, was the prime employer for this study and this report that's attached for your information. They found their use was very high. Therefore, they needed a full-time staff lawyer, and they went from shared services in 2022 to full-time staff person, which I believe the hours are 4 days a week for that individual. Pelham was forecasting in one of the reports that I read on site a $100,000 savings by going from even shared to a full-time model. Given this report obviously coincides with your budget process, which are about your budget deliberations, staff are recommending that this process be deferred to council as a whole to consider the outside factors. So there's many outside factors that you're all, I guess, grappling with at this point in time. So I obviously, with the recommendation is that you look at it in its entirety with your budget. So some of the things that staff have thought about that you're going to have to consider is the province's back and forth regarding more or less the future of Niagara municipalities. The number of legal files may increase or decrease, and a lot of the files that we'd noted are old historical files. So those may begin to come to a close in 2024, and adding another full-time staff or another department to the town's corporate services. So those are some of the things you may want to consider. The one thing that is difficult for staff to actually come up with not necessarily a number, but how do you define what the in-kind benefit of having an in-house lawyer would be? Because there's so often myself sitting in meetings where I think, oh, wow, this is where you really need the insights of a full-time lawyer to help bring reports forward without having to call external legal, someone that actually knows the real town in its entirety. So anyhow, we bring this forward, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to help. And I just want to thank, before I give you back the chair, Mr. Chair, I want to thank Jessica Beaupre, who did a lot of the heavy lifting on the report and a lot of the research. Thanks, Jess. And so I may have to turn to her for some of her expertise on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, Jess, for all the hard work. I'll open the floor for discussions or questions, starting with Councillor Howe.
Thank you, through Chair, and I think this is probably not a specific question. And in conversations, the biggest portion of the numbers that we got are planning issues. It's not like, we're trying to tie up a property line, with somebody next door or a neighborhood dispute. That can be pretty straightforward, but what I've seen, and I'm here to tell you that from the 90s till now, the planning process has just gotten so complex that I don't see a whole lot of people with a whole lot of capability. There's a lot of people that are going to say that, sure, I did planning 101 at law school and think they can hang a shingle up on that. It's not the case. There's just too much to come into play. We're seeing it. We're seeing how judgments are, I don't know if that's the right term, made against us that certainly takes us by surprise. And you kind of question, well, it's somewhat similar to the old OMB. You kind of question some of those decisions. But if you don't have somebody that can speak the language and understands the language, it really concerns me. And we've got to, it's not just cut and dry. It's not a matter of, just going out and get a lawyer. Not the case. So we've just got to really be careful on this one.
Thank you, Don. Mayor Jordan.
Thank you, through the chair. Really good report. I'm really happy with how it was done, and I think that there is some merit to look into it. My question's more about pre-2018. I think trying to look back to actually see where our legal services were being spent. I think each department kind of put it in their main budget, and so I know it was, certainly speaking from past, looking through the town's legal fees from 2010 to 2018, it's very hard to find them. They were, like, for lack of a better term, buried a lot. So we don't have good numbers of what we spent. I think we're doing a much better job tracking legal fees now. And so we can see what the true cost is. And I think you'll find, and I didn't look previous from 2010, but those 8 years, they were very buried. And so it's very hard to find out what our true legal costs were. And I know for certain years they were substantial because there were a number of OMB cases. And I know from personal experience that they did spend a lot from 12 to 14 for sure. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Anybody else? Sorry, Bonnie, go ahead.
Just one comment through you, Mr. Chair. to Mayor Jordan. You're correct, exactly what you said. One of the things that staff did this year, which we've put in place, is to begin with a ticket system for legal services, just as we have for our IT services. So the ticket asks a lot of questions. Have you checked all the networks, local networks? Have you done this and this and this? And then it has an approval for this. I believe it's the CAO and myself, well, the clerk and the CAO, so that we can actually see if it's necessary to call legal or if we can get assistance from sort of our own little networks. For example, I noted a lot of the things that we were paying for were like 15-minute calls, 20-minute calls, and so those kinds of things really I felt like we kind of needed to step up monitoring that, so that's being done as well. It's very difficult with the old files because they're ongoing, but going forward, this is also what I propose be in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'll make a few comments, if you don't mind. I have my biggest concern, of course, is that law has become so complicated and so diverse and so specialized. And to kind of go back to what Councillor Howe had to say, there's so many specialists. I mean, it's like medicine. I mean, like everything is now down to the nth degree of specialization. And we look at how this town is growing, and there's, how do you get the right lawyer for staff that would cover cybersecurity, for example, or HR matters, labor issues. And then there's the planning, and then there's litigation, and then there's integrity complaints and whatever. I mean, there's such a broad brush of law, of various specialties of law involved here. And I don't know, and I'm yet to be convinced that one person on staff is going to be able to cover all of those things, all of those items. And I look at the costs that we spent over the past year, and I see, like more than half, like $280,000 in 2023, for example, and in 2022 was even worse, $738,000 just in planning. If I was to kind of look at these numbers and where we need to put our emphasis, I would say we go out and hire a planning lawyer. And that would be the person, and then everything else would go towards other specialties and maybe a law firm or contract. I'm just throwing these things out. I'm not saying that we should do this, but this is my take on looking at this. So $280,000 this past year, and I think we did a pretty good job managing our legal fees this past year. So that's probably lower end of the scale. So you want to reply to that?
Yes, just to first clarify, so far 2023, and this is right up to date, I just received those numbers from finance, is about 452,165. So that's the new number. That's one thing. And in the report, I believe I do mention that you're right, the matters are mostly planning. Very difficult to find municipal lawyers. I know that because we did a lot of hiring in St. Catharines. We had one municipal lawyer who was excellent, and she stayed for the 10 years, and they're rare, where all her training was done at the provincial level. However, I do believe if you have one lawyer, even one that's specific to planning matters on site, they will also be able to triage a lot of the matters. They'll understand which matters need to be triaged. And you can't have even one lawyer without, I can only speak from my past. There's 4 lawyers in the legal department in St. Catharines, and we still have an external legal budget. There's just too many other things going on, and no one has all those specialties or can give you the best advice. Thank you.
Emily, continue on that vein. I think that over the past couple of years, we've gotten better at understanding the planning laws, and it's all changed as well. I think a lot of this will change because in the past term, we sent everything to OLT. Every time we went to OLT was $150,000. So it all seems to be in there. And I think as we go forward, as we get the right staff and the more experienced staff in the planning department, I think that's my personal opinion, that will come down and we will get better at it. And, anyway, that's just that piece, and I'll move on because I'll just repeat myself too much here. Some of the concerns too is that turnover. First of all, finding a lawyer has that broad knowledge that was prepared to come work for municipality on staff. I mean, what is the turnover of municipal lawyers? I mean, you mentioned you had for example, Bonnie, you had a great lawyer in St. Catharines that lasted 10 years, but overall, I would think that lawyers, they're going to be young lawyers starting out in their careers, or maybe somebody on the retirement end of things who want a place to park themselves for the rest of their lives, whatever, like us counselors. So, I'm only kidding. So I mean, I have some concerns around that turnover, finding the right person. And if we share lawyers with another municipality, I have a concern about conflict. Conflict about who gets to use the lawyer the most. I mean, overlapping portfolios, conflicts of interest. So I have some concerns around that too, and I won't go into all of those things. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts. I don't know if any of the others on council that are at this particular committee have any others, but those are my concerns. I might be off the wall here, but I don't know how we cover those questions and how we assure ourselves if we go down that road, we have the right person on staff. I think that going to a law firm, we get this broad, universal kind of specialist all in one place. And that gives us, I think, the ultimate situation. If somebody leaves within that firm, there's always backup people in those firms to cover off the portfolio. So those are some of my concerns, and again, I'm sure we're going to have a similar discussion when it comes to council. So anyway, that's me. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts, concerns, or questions around that. Okay. Bonnie, do you want to respond to any of that, or no?
No, that's absolutely why I think the report needed to go to council as a whole, which is why I'm saying defer it to your budget process, because there's a lot of, this represents a good chunk of money in terms of whatever way you go, whether you stay status quo, whether you decide to have a hybrid model, which is one on-site lawyer plus external legal fees, or whether you decide to, hire someone and have your own lawyer. All of this represents something. Our shared service, was the third alternative. So that's why your questions are my questions, and you don't know where you're going. The other unknown, and I think I say that is, and it's key, is a lot of the files that are costing a lot of money are historical files. They're old, and they're going to start to come to an end, hopefully. And so maybe that will make things different. I don't know. I can't predict the future and where things go. However, those are some of the information that I could provide as well.
Thank you, Bonnie. And maybe we should suss out how much of the old files are caught up in all this. I mean, I don't think it's outlined here, but anyways, I'll leave it at that. Okay. Seeing no other questions, resolve that report TC 24-01, consideration for town in-house legal services dated January 15, 2024 be received, and that this report be referred to the 2024 budget discussions for consideration at that time. And I need, all in favor. Sorry, all in favor? Carried. Okay, let's move on then to item 8.2, legal fee cost update from finance. Can I please get a mover and a seconder to get this item on the floor for discussion? Mayor Jordan? Councillor Howe? Okay, thank you. Would Stephanie, would you like to take us down that road? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report really is just a summary, a very high level of the costs from 2020 to 2023 for legal fees, as mentioned, that are going within that general ledger code that we talked about. The appendix then breaks it out into the different departments. On that appendix, it should say 2023 November year-to-date. Originally, we had a report for September year-to-date, so those numbers do align with the November year-to-date. And as we just discussed with the previous report from Bonnie, the bulk of the legal is still within planning at just over 280,000 this year. And what I would note is that legal bills tend to be kind of delayed bills. So this is at November, but we will probably still be getting bills in for the next couple of months related to last year. So that's normal within this business, that it takes a while to get the bills out. So we can provide some updated numbers once we have them finalized with the external legal.
Thank you, Steph. CEO would like to make a comment. Go ahead, Sarah.
Also, a quick comment. With any kind of legal file, it sometimes impacts several departments. So these are very rough estimates for the breakdown of the departments because, for example, the Greenbelt file impacted Public Works, Planning, Corporate, right? But it would only be charged under kind of one department. That's how the invoicing happens. So I just wanted to provide that notice that it is a very rough estimate of breakdowns between the departments. And there are usually way more departments involved in any kind of file. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, maybe Sarah can answer this. How long what is the usual time frame when a file is opened, a new legal file is opened? I mean, it could be short or it could be very long. I know we have some long files still out there. So do they bill us as they go along, or I mean, do they wait till the file's finished and give us one big lump? Maybe Stephanie can answer that.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, on legal files, you get progress billings as they go. So they will provide billing updates similar to construction progress reports, where they get to a certain point and they'll do their billing to get you up to date to that point in time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that? You got off light. Okay, so moving along. Okay, once you finish the summary, we've opened up for discussion. Okay, fine. Okay, resolve the report FIN 24-01 legal fee cost update dated January 15, 2024 be received as information. All in favor? Carried. Okay, next item, no correspondence. Any other business pertaining to this committee? Seeing none. Next corporate services meeting is scheduled for February 5 at 12 p.m. Thank you very much for your attendance. Meeting adjourned.